The end of another college baseball season, which means it's time to look in the mirror and do some soul searching. Hello everyone, welcome back to another video. Heidi Throws here, and after a couple months of reflecting on what was my first full season as a college baseball pitcher, I wanted to give you guys some of my thoughts and insights on how the season went, what happened, and how I plan on getting better because of it. This past season was my first full season as a college baseball pitcher. This meant I was constantly training and constantly practicing like I was a pitcher. I was no longer catching bullpens, I was no longer a catcher, I was no longer hitting, strictly just pitching. This past season, I got the most outings on the mound I've ever gotten in a competitive baseball season, as well as the most innings and just the most overall time that I've touched the baseball slope within 4 months. I had never experienced a lot of what the mental game had to offer, especially as a pitcher. Last season, I kind of did a little bit, but I was put in a lot of non-pressured situations. So this season was the first time where I was really relied upon. At the beginning of 2024, I set a number of goals for myself for the season. I wrote these down, I looked at them, but I didn't really want to look at them again. It was kind of just, these are what I want to hit. Now, I didn't obsess over these goals going into the season, which is something I look back on and say, hey, maybe I should have looked at these goals a lot more so I kind of knew what I was going towards. That was something I should have probably done, but I wanted to set these goals and just hit these numbers. This is what I want. This is what I want, but I didn't obsess over it because, again, at the same time, I had never started a baseball game until this season. So I didn't know what to expect, what the in and out, day in, day after would look like, especially as someone who's playing almost every day. I wanted to challenge myself, but I made these goals pretty lofty. Here they were. For the season, I wanted to have a 4.00 ERA or less. I wanted to allow 30 earned runs or less, have 50 plus strikeouts, or 20 or less walks. Now, at the time that I wrote these goals, I had only pitched 13 innings as a whole as a collegiate pitcher, and it was honestly probably a lot less experience on the bump, especially because I switched positions not too long ago before I wrote this. So at the time I did write these goals, I was only a pitcher for about a year. I didn't really quite understand the wherewithal and the different things that come with being a pitcher and how it challenges you mentally and how analytical the position is. And I didn't quite grasp what the day in and day out would look like as a starting pitcher, and that was something that I really came to understand by the end of the season. Compared to those goals, here's what my actual stats looked like. I finished with a 7.89 ERA. In total, I allowed 45 earned runs. I only had 29 strikeouts for the season, but I did have only 16 walks. So we only completed one of these 4 goals. So while I did only complete one of these goals, it was very glared upon. The 16 walks, obviously it's not bad, right? Over 51 innings of work during the season, but I did give up 94 hits. That's a lot. Yeah, I gave up a lot of hits, and it was not fun, especially in the very pressurized situations. And that's what I think really hurt me, is when I wanted to be aggressive, I wanted to be more aggressive, but I couldn't exactly go after those hitters because I was just literally leaving pitches up. Now looking back on the season, that's different. I have the experience now. I know what those situations feel like. Did I have to struggle? Yes, I had to fail a lot to understand what the different ins and outs of pitching were. But that's just something that comes with learning and experiencing different types of things and trial and error, of course. Without those moments, I don't think I could have learned any of these other lessons that I'm now trying to build my off season around, or that I'm taking into next season. Looking back on some of those moments where I felt like I got into that flow state, especially as a pitcher, that was some of the best pitching moments I think I've had during the season. Now, did they always have the best outcomes? Not all the time, but I learned that I can't be too aggressive and try to overdo it when I'm in the flow state. When I'm in the flow state, I just need to keep going, right? I can't be too aggressive and just keep working with what's working, right? Because obviously you're in a groove, you're in a rhythm. Right before the season started, I have a couple videos of just where I literally struggled. I struggled for a couple weeks right before the season started. And I kind of realized that I was thinking about my mechanics so much right before the season that I wasn't getting into that consistency and I wasn't developing those movement patterns correctly. I was allowing my brain to think about what I was doing and not actually just moving as an athlete. When you're just an athlete, you're just moving, right? You don't have time to think. And that's what I did learn after the first 3 or 4 starts of the season. Once I made that switch, that's when I realized, all right, I can do this. I gained a lot of confidence from that. I also had to just trust myself. And that was a really big learning moment for me, especially because when it comes to mental toughness and when it comes to this thing a lot of pitchers call flow state, right? You're in this kind of trance that you trust yourself. You trust your mechanics, you trust the work that you've put in. And you're just, quote unquote, being an athlete. And that was something I did not learn until about halfway through the season, I'd say. My mind was in 30 different places during the season. And this was something that I really struggled with a lot. As my season went on and I had a lot more outings on the mound, my season looked something kind of like this. 1 step forward, 1 step back. 1 step forward, 1 step back. 1 step forward, 1 step back. And then no step. See what I mean? That's what my season kind of looked like overall. I had a lot of times where I could just never really develop that consistency, right? I'd go out on the mound and only give up maybe 1 earned or 2 earned, right? Which is really great. But then, I come back and give up like 10 hits and 8 earned. There was just no consistency and there was no standard. And that was kind of on me. I didn't have the mental wherewithal to, this is the standard that we're going to set, right? And this is what we're going to try and hold ourselves to every single week. So I've talked a lot about the season, what was going through my head and all these different things, but you're probably wondering, where do I go from here and how do I get better? Simple, just throw. That's the mindset and the mantra that I'm taking into my training this offseason. I'm not being terribly analytical about it. I'm just throwing the baseball. I mean, literally just throwing the baseball. In my mind, when I think of just throwing the baseball, I think of just being an athlete. This mental shift that I learned during the season, I need to apply to all aspects of my training. I need to apply that mentality of just throwing the baseball, just being an athlete. Because that's really all you're doing. You're just throwing the baseball and you're just competing as an athlete. And that was the missing piece, I think, that I had during the season. So how are we gonna fix that? Well, we're gonna fix that by affirming myself, yelling it honestly if we have to, right? But you're repeating it over and over and over and over and over again, almost kind of like a war cry, that this is what you're doing. You're making an affirmative statement within your head that this is what you're gonna do. And so far, I've been doing that, and that's really, really helped. And I think that by embracing this mantra of just throwing and just being an athlete is gonna really help me activate that flow state and really help me during next season. Now, as the off season is underway and I am undergoing my new training, I've taken more of a simple approach to just training as a pitcher. I'm not getting all analytical. I'm not getting too caught up in the mechanical mishaps and all these different miscues and roadblocks and different things like that. I'm just accepting them for what they are and just keeping it very simple. And as a pitcher, you have to keep it very simple because there's so many different things that are happening throughout the game of baseball that are A, not in your control, and B, are a part of the game. Now that I have the experience of what it feels like to undergo a long season, it makes it so much easier to develop better routines, better training, and overall just develop a better plan. Overall though, I just want to say that I'm very, very grateful to have been put in the position that I was this season, and I'm really excited to see what next season holds.